Josh, thank you so much for joining us at this episode of Build by Humans. It's a podcast that we talk about building products, but not from the technical engineering point of view, but from human people point of view. It takes a lot. There's a team in engineering, there are other teams, communication, all of that comes to play. And there are plenty of people that talk about the best technology, the best, latest and greatest tools. They do way better than I would ever be able to do that. So, I get to focus on the part that I live and breathe every day, and that's people and getting them to do really good, cool things and feel good about it. With that, I'm going to turn it over to you. Tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. My name's Josh. I've been in technology one way or another since the late 90s, so doing this for a long time. And I've been full-time in team leadership and management since about 2018, doing that remotely, working for different startups in particular. I'm currently at a company called Skylight. We make the Skylight frame, the Skylight calendar, and am helping to lead a team of about 23 engineers today. And rapidly growing.
Yeah, people have been in business or in technology for more than a few years. We've seen different side of things, right?
Yeah.
We've seen everybody in the office, everybody literally standing around the same table. When I started in the early 90s, everybody was in their own cubicle with, like 6 feet high wall, and you're sitting there like, I don't know where I exist. And then that went away. And today, obviously, everybody's remote. I know when we were talking originally, you mentioned you've been doing a lot of remote, even before COVID, before it became mainstream. How did it feel? How did it feel back then when it wasn't the everyday thing?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, I just needed that for my personal life. I've got a family and we had some situations going on at home where I just needed the flexibility of being able to work from home, which is why I went into this at all. And I joined my first startup. It was a company called Creative Market. And I was very nervous, especially once they asked me to be a manager there, which was about 6 months in. I came on as a developer and then went into management. I was very nervous because I had managed engineers previously in person. And we ran into hilarious things like trying to look busy. So you would have a game going on one screen and then quickly switch over, and I'd catch engineers doing silly things like that, or taking ridiculously long bathroom breaks. I don't want to police that, but we had to. Or people falling asleep at their desk, and it was just ridiculous. And so there was a lot of fear, like, how am I going to know people are actually doing their jobs in a remote setting? What I quickly learned, and maybe I've just been lucky the places I've been at, but I don't have any of those problems. And in fact, I don't need to even worry about those issues, because what I tend to deal with is engineers who are trying. So all you have is your productivity. All you have is your output. Mm-hmm. Are you making an impact? Are you doing something meaningful for the product, for the company? And nothing else matters. You want to take a nap in the middle of the day because you're tired? Great, please do. That's awesome. And then just let your team know and come back when you're available, and let's get it done. If you need to go for a walk, you want to sit and play a video game for 30 minutes. I genuinely don't care. Whatever it takes for you to be at your best, that's what matters. Are you showing up for meetings? Are you available to your teammates? Is your code getting written, and is it good? And is it contributing? Are you being more than a code monkey and actually bringing your energy to the table? These are the things that I care about. I don't, busyness is not the metric that we're watching. Being at your desk is not the metric that we're watching. It's just your output.
You mentioned something. You said people switched from one screen to another playing game. I'm really going to age myself, but before we had Excel, we had Lotus 1, 2, 3. And I remember, right, there was the spreadsheet program, DOS, and then later on Windows. And I remember there was a utility, a hotkey, that you would push, and it immediately puts up the Lotus 1, 2, 3 screen, and anybody who walks by, it looks like you're looking at a spreadsheet. Wow, that was a long time ago, and I still remember that. But you're absolutely right. Engineering, and we sometimes forget, engineering is development, is creative work. It's not measured by minutes. It's not measured by lines of code. It's not measured by any of that. It's measured by how well you're doing your job. And when you're creative, you can be creative. From 9 to 6, I'm going to be creative. And then from 6 to 9, I'm not going to be creative. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, and I've got engineers on my team now who take time to go deal with, I do this. If my kid's having a meltdown and my wife needs help, I just go take care of that. Mm-hmm. I have engineers on my team who do rock climbing in the middle of the week, and they make up their time elsewhere. We're not tracking their time. We're not doing any of that. And we're putting out some of the highest quality, best code I've ever seen. The thing that conversation that I am constantly having is, how's your stress level? Are you taking enough time off? Are you scheduling your PTO? Are you in the evenings checking out and getting to do something that's just for you? Are you stepping away from work? And I think that's actually the biggest danger of remote work is when you don't create those healthy boundaries. You don't have a place where you are going to take care of your social needs, your downtime, your whatever creative outlets or hobbies that you have, like making space for that. It's very easy, especially if imposter syndrome starts to creep in a little bit. And
Very much so, yes.
Yeah, am I as good as everybody else on the team? Is my job security good? People start to really lean into overwork and try to prove themselves by pushing in ways that actually make them less productive in the end, right? You're not at your best when you're exhausted, and you're not at your best when you're stressed out. And it does nobody any good on the team if you let yourself burn out. So
you mentioned something, and I want to sort of circle back. You said family. So initially you mentioned you switched to remote because you had some family things and you need to do that, and that's understandable. I have a lot of anecdotes just from friends, people that used to work in very much time-driven businesses, and not necessarily IT. They went home, productivity increased. And when you talk to them and you talk to their team, I know some team managers, team leads, I know actual individual contributors, and they all say the same thing. We got flexibility and we got more time to dedicate to our family, or more flexible time to dedicate to our family. And in return, that improves productivity. It actually improves the amount of work we do. There's a lot of conversations today. Everybody used to be in the office. Remote was sort of sometimes here and there. COVID came, everybody went remote for several years. Everybody was remote. Over the past year or so, we keep hearing some companies, there are two sides of the coin. We will always be remote, and no, everybody's coming to the office. And if you're not in office in the next 2 months, you need to find another job. What do you think wins? And I have a strong opinion on my own, but I'd love to hear your opinion. Yeah. What do you think wins? What do you think the future is?
Yeah, I think two things. The productivity goes up when you're at home because you do have access to your family. You get to be a little bit more of a human instead of just like context shifting between being my work self and then my home self. And there's pitfalls to that, right? But like, I think that the big thing is, especially if you came from cubicle world, right? Like the last place that I worked in before I came to my first remote startup, it was just loud. Salespeople walking through the office, ringing bells and being loud and telling dumb jokes. And it wasn't just sales, but it was primarily sales. Or, I'm in the middle of a flow state trying to write some code, and then an engineer comes up with questions, and they're right here behind me. I got really good at like just throwing the finger up and being like, hey, one minute, let me finish this thought. And you just don't have that. You can close Slack. You can hide that for a little bit and just come up for air every few minutes whenever you get to a good spot. So getting into that flow state is much, much easier if you have a good dedicated space in your home to do that. So I'm a big believer in remote. That said, I don't think fully what remote means in some places. Like I was interviewing somebody the other day who said they worked at a company where they went months and never saw their manager's face because all of their whole culture was not this, where it's face to face. It was cameras off, quick meetings, and then we're going to leave you alone. Very minimalist interaction. It was pretty lonely and it was hard to collaborate, and there was never any in-person time. What I like, and we do a version of this here, lean heavy into FaceTime. If you can get on a call to answer, like Slack somebody, if it can be handled async, great, Slack that question. But if you need to be unblocked, you need somebody to rubber duck with you. You need somebody to, think through a complicated question. Let them manage their own time. Ask, hey, do you happen to have 5 minutes to just help me think through this? Can we just hop on a call and talk this out? Is always better. And then the other thing is, you supplement that with in-person time. Travel. If you're not, as a company, you're not spending money on having to keep a huge office to house all of your employees 5 days a week. Spend that money instead to bring people together in person as much as you can. For us, we have most of our employees are in the US, but we have some international. We fly them in 2-3 times a year. We try to get the whole team together. And then we allot budget for, if I've just got 2 engineers who are working on something and they're like, this would be so much easier if we could just share a screen. They can just tell me. I don't have to get permission. I can just approve it. Get a plane ticket, get a hotel, go. One of you go to the other and sit down, get at a WeWork or somewhere, at a coffee shop, whatever. Get that whiteboard, get that laptop out, and sit down and work through the thing together. Our back-end team here, we have a few of them are in Portland. So they just get together in Portland every couple of months just to have some in-person touch-based time. And I think it's been really helpful and really healthy for them.
I think you touched on something, and I don't hear this a lot. People talk about in person and people talk about, so there's some people that say in person, right? They do Zoom calls or whatever, video calls. And then some people will do once a year, twice a year, the whole company gets together. But there's something in between.
Yes.
Before I had Mirigos, before I ran my company, I was still running engineering teams. I was a VP of engineering for a large engineering company, or a large company was a large engineering team. And we had a remote group they were co-located, so they all were in the same office. This is way before COVID, right? So everybody was in
Sure.
the same office, but they were in Ukraine. And when I put the plan together and I set this up, right, I got this going, hired them and everything, we actually budgeted that every 3 months, 2 people from the US team will spend 1 to 2 weeks in Ukraine,
Cool.
and 2 people from Ukraine will spend 2 weeks in the US. And that rotated, right? And usually I would go and I'll take one of the team members, and 2 sort of random people from Ukraine office would come here. Created 2 things. Created connection, because people knew each other. They went out, they had lunches, they had dinners, they hung out together. It was no longer that remote person I never have to think about. It's somebody I know, it's somebody I've seen, it's somebody I work with. They just happen to be in a different office. It was so much easier to transfer knowledge because you didn't have to wait for a question. You could overhear somebody talk about things and go, wait, what are you talking about? Because I didn't know. And the last, but I think one of the most important things, what do you think the best benefit of working for us was for the Ukrainian team? They got to spend 2 weeks in US
Right.
on a company dollar.
Right.
Cheap. It was very cheap for the company. But it was huge and it went such a long way because people didn't want to leave. They wanted to be hired. We were the employer of choice where we were, right? People wanted to work for us before we ever opened positions.
I love
and
that.
People don't think about those things today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really smart.
Yeah. When you're hiring remotely, when there are technical skills, obviously, right? And whether they're remote or local doesn't matter. You got to know whatever language you got to know, whatever skills you got to have. But then there are soft skills. And their traits that a person has. How do you think that changes? How do you think that moves from everybody's in office to everybody's remote, and even more if that remote means overseas?
Oh gosh, hiring the right culture fit or culture stretch is an art, and it takes time. The way that I like to think about it is in 2 areas. Values alignment are the ways that we have our values set up as a company. And the things that we care about, do those line well with your personal values? Like, are you going to feel like you're being asked to stretch into something that doesn't really fit? Or is this going to be just very natural for you? And second is like, are you genuinely enthused and excited about something that we uniquely have to offer? Because that's going to be the thing that's going to make you pour your heart into this. It's going to make you want to stick it out. And so when I'm thinking about hiring, that's the 2 things I'm dialing into. I don't want a homogenous team. I don't want a bunch of people who look and sound and talk the same. I want a lot of diversity, but I want in that diversity for us all to be pushing in the same direction, be really excited about it. And so when we are hiring and we're looking at our remote employees, things that we're really leaning into are like, can you communicate well? And this doesn't mean like, can you speak perfect English with no accent? Like that's obviously, that's not a deal. But what does matter is, can you get right to the point and explain in clear, crisp language the information I'm asking for? And can you do it in a way that addresses the specific audience that you're talking to? And so that's going to matter. And honestly, it doesn't matter whether they are, just a few blocks away from me or halfway across the world. Those are all the things I'm still looking for. And then I also want to make sure they're going to be somebody who enjoys and is happy doing remote work, because some engineers don't like that. And they may just be so desperate for a job that they're willing to take it, but they're not going to be happy in a remote role if that's just not what they're wired for. So that's the other thing I kind of look for.
It's funny, you're bringing up so many memories from my previous lives. People do equate communication to English knowledge, accent, and it's not.
It's not.
I've seen plenty of native English speakers that cannot communicate a single thought.
Yes.
And I'm laughing because I used to work with the guy, and he was a brilliant engineer. He would walk into my office and start talking. And I literally had to establish the rule with him. He starts talking, I raise my hand. He stops, he thinks, and he starts from actually the beginning. Because what was happening in his mind, as he was walking, he played the conversation in his head, and he would just continue while in my office.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, you literally started mid-sentence. I have no clue what this is in reference to.
Right.
And it was very playful. He's a brilliant engineer, but that's something that, I had to work with him on. And it wasn't English knowledge. It was communication.
Yeah. It makes me think of, so when I was in college, I went to a small school and they did this thing. The dean of the computer science department did this thing where twice a year they did a big social event. In the fall, it was like a pizza party and a LAN party. And they would invite all the engineers or all the engineering students to come to this. And then in the spring, it was a paintball tournament. But what happened was if you showed up and you socialized and you did the thing, there was a lot of like you had to rub elbows with people. You had to talk and engage in conversation. If you did all of that, you made it through the whole thing. You got to drop your lowest test score from any computer science class. And so, of course, everybody came. And I remember asking the dean of the department, I was like, this seems really generous. Like, I'm grateful for it. Don't get me wrong. But like, why do we do this? And maybe the most valuable advice I got in college came from him right in that moment. He said, look around at all these brilliant people around you, really smart engineers, programmers, networking types. Like people are brilliant. And many of them are in this field because they don't really like people. They want to just sit behind a computer and do technical things and be left alone. And that's not the way the world works. And he said, there will always be somebody who is smarter than you and better than you at some technical thing. But if you can be really good at the people side of it, you will get promoted faster. You will grow better in your career. You will go further. So lean into that. Do that. And that's what I want everybody here to at least have some exposure to trying to do that. And that's just become like a thing that I think about all the time, both for myself and how I've gotten to the position that I'm in today, but also when I'm hiring, and it's advice that I give to my engineers. I'm looking for people who can do the people side of the job as well as they can the code side. Because if all that you're doing is setting yourself up to be a code monkey, I've got bad news for you. AI is coming for you. Mm-hmm. And if you are really good at the people side, if you are good at understanding what people need and really thinking through a problem, engineers are brilliant problem solvers. And problem solving and creativity are basically the same process in your brain, just one has a lot of constraints and one doesn't. And so you can use that creative problem solving skill to get to what is the thing we're actually trying to do? And what is it about the thing I'm building that can do that? But you have to understand people almost always. It doesn't matter if you're building a B2B SaaS tool or you're building consumer electronics. There's always a people problem at the heart of what you're doing. And if you don't understand people and you can't communicate to people and you can't listen and also explain things in a way that other people can hear, you won't bring that part of it. And I think that's maybe the most valuable thing that a really good engineer brings. It's not their ability to write Java or to write whatever programming language it is. It's their ability to understand people and then to design really elegant technical solutions and communicate. That's it.
I think this is so brilliantly said. And I'll add one thing to it. It's not only to understand people. Understanding people allows you to understand the actual business objective of what it is you're building.
Right.
We're not building code for the sake of writing code. Right. I've heard engineers to say so many times, I don't deal with customers. Yes, you do. Product owner is your customer. Project manager is your customer. Sales guy is your customer.
Right.
You're dealing with the customers. Even though you may not be directly talking to the end user, you're dealing with the customer who comes in and says, we're building this feature, we're modifying this feature because of X, Y, and Z. And if you don't understand this, that's why we end up with, oh yeah, next 6 months, we're not going to put any new features because we have to refactor the code.
Right. And those people that are your customers, they have their own customers.
Of course.
And so if you can get to like, what is it? It's not just like, what is my project manager or my product manager, or whoever asking me to do? What are they trying to achieve? And how can I help them achieve that goal? That's the same question that a good entrepreneur or a good PM is going to ask. What are my customers actually trying to achieve? You don't just take a list of things that customers ask for because they often come to you with solutions. But engineers understand the problem underneath that and solve the problem elegantly. And so if you can approach people in a similar way to the way that you approach code, you think about the problem, you try to understand what is it we're actually trying to accomplish, and let's solve that together. That it's not that different. It's just people are the interface instead of your computer.
Absolutely. Cool. I think I'm going to ask one more question, and that I want to talk a little bit about time zones, cultures, different regions. You mentioned you have a lot of people working in the US, and you also have people remotely, Latin America, Brazil, you mentioned. Do you think it's important that people are aligned in the same time zone or similar time zones? Or do you think there is an easy and a good way to have teams more distributed, more dispersed across
Sure.
the world?
I mean, you can make anything work, first of all, obviously. We have some partners that are in East Asia that we work with, and we make it work. But it means that I've got a couple of people who are up on meetings at midnight sometimes, and it's not ideal. When I first came to work here, our only QA engineer that we had was part-time working for us from Turkey. And brilliant guy, love him to death. But it was creating this weird situation where an engineer would start building a thing and then would pass it to QA, and then QA would have a question and they'd have to pass it back. And a thing that could, if they were aligned, could have resolved itself in a few minutes, a quick call over Slack. Instead, took several days. And so the best thing that happened was when he reached out to me and said, I really want to move back to the US. If I come, will you hire me full time? And I said, yes, please come to the US, because getting him here aligned with our time zones so that he could be in more meetings and also available more. Back to full time was amazing for us. But like, getting him in those meetings, thinking strategically, hopping on those calls to solve problems in minutes that would otherwise have taken days, easily paid for the difference in salary there. And so I am a big fan of trying to have time zone alignment where it makes sense. Now, we also have some partners that we work with that we just pass work to, and they do the work overnight, and then it comes back to us. They manage their own team. That works pretty well, especially for discrete projects that can kind of be run separate and don't affect the main product. But for the larger things, I personally really like to have my team's time zone aligned. It doesn't have to be perfect, but there has to be enough overlap. And I've also seen some teams that do the thing where like maybe they'll hire a team from Belarus or somewhere like that. And those engineers will work at night, their time, to be on the same time zone as the team. If that works, that works. It is. But the thing that I think matters is the same thing I said earlier. Like, if I have an engineer who wants to get up and work from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. because that's when they're the most creative, please do. But I need you to be available and like genuinely helpful in these core hours in the middle of the day.
Right.
Also, because that's when people are going to have questions, when we need to have our stand-up meetings, when we're going to do project kickoffs and retros. If you're not there for that, you're not really part of the team. And so for my core, I want to have them generally in the US, or at least on US time zones, so that that's really easy for them, because I don't want to ask somebody to work in the middle of the night unless that's just what they want to do.
I have personally, and I've tried this many times, I've personally never seen successful handover, right? Where they say in theory, the US team works during the day, the overseas team works at night, and they pass it over.
There's
It
always
just doesn't work. There's all friction. There's also, you passed it over, they had a question, that means they just lost a day, and
Right.
it's just not going to move forward. But I think what you mentioned is different regions also have different native work hours, I would say, meaning like in Europe, it's Eastern Europe, people tend to work later, and that creates enough overlap from what I've seen that allows for that core hours, enough hours in a day where there's enough communication, and then everybody's happy. So, but I'm with you.
Yeah, and I do think that you can get by with just a few hours of overlap. You don't need your entire schedule to overlap for most projects that I've been part of anyway. I think maybe if it was like really early startup and everybody's just scrappy all the time, like, yeah, I mean, let's get even then I might even say like, don't do remote, like get in the same room. But because you're just going to need to be able to respond to things really quickly. But for most things, I think that works really well.
Well, Josh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I think this is an incredible conversation. I think very interesting, your experience, so much alliance with mine. It's almost unbelievable.
It was great talking to you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks.